In this video, I'm going to talk about why I bought a brand new 2021 Jeep Wrangler instead of the brand new 2021 Ford Bronco. Now, I'm going to anticipate some of the comments in the section below before I even begin. I think a lot of people are going to think that I just bought a Wrangler because I'm a quote Jeep fanboy. I really work hard to keep my bias out of every video I do, be it a car review or a new truck review. I really want to keep things fair and equal to all the manufacturers. Granted, I'm not perfect, but I'm really trying here, folks, and I don't think I'm a Jeep fanboy because I like every vehicle in their own specific right. Now, I just had the chance to drive the new Ford Bronco back in Austin, Texas last week, and it's amazing. They did a really good job with the big Bronco, and I think the engineers and the Ford team should be proud of what they have accomplished, and it does a lot of stuff better than the Wrangler. But when I went to buy my first ever new vehicle, this is the first ever vehicle I bought with my own money from scratch, I said, well, let's look at the pros and cons of each and take an objective look at how I'm going to use this vehicle and what the important aspects are for my life. So that's how I made my fair and unbiased decision to purchase the Wrangler, and I'm going to walk you through that right now. One of my biggest purchasing factors when it came to buying a vehicle was size. I'm a huge proponent for smaller, lighter weight vehicles. Not only are they more maneuverable in the city, they are easier to park, and they are exceptionally important when you are going off-road, for example, in Colorado, where we have small, narrow trails surrounded by trees. So when I drove the Bronco, even the two-door, I was shocked by how large it felt. It feels like the difference between a mid-size and a full-size truck. And I think for a lot of people that's going to be a good thing because the Wrangler is pretty narrow and it is pretty tight, but that is exactly what I want when I am buying a vehicle specifically for Colorado and our off-road trails, but also because of my parking situation and how I use this around the city. Now, width, the Wrangler is a couple inches narrower than the Bronco, but it's nearly 7 inches shorter, two-door to two-door in terms of its comparison. But the big deal for me is the curb weight. I have learned in the last few years of off-roading everything from power wagons to G-Wagons to Samurais. Weight is one of the most important things off-road, and the less weight you have, the easier you can scramble up hills or go through mud pits or avoid getting bogged down in the sand. And let me get the exact number because I don't want to misquote it. But apples to apples, this Wrangler is some 371 pounds lighter than an equivalent Bronco. Almost 400 pounds lighter. But 371 pounds is an enormous amount of weight, and it's a big deal all around when buying a Wrangler over a Bronco. So one of my concerns when it came to purchasing a new vehicle was durability, dependability, and reliability. Quite honestly, we do not know which of the two is going to be more reliable in the long term. The Bronco is brand new. But I do have a concern over it being a brand new vehicle in its first year. I'm not picking specifically on Ford. This is the case with, I think, all the manufacturers. But typically, it takes a couple of years to work out the bugs, to work out the kinks. And I really do hope that the Bronco is dead solid right off the bat. But we here at TFL have had an experience with a vehicle that was brand new that, did have a problem or two. And putting my hard-earned money into a vehicle, I want it to be as solid as possible. Now, I think a 4Runner, it's probably going to be longer lived than this Wrangler. But quite honestly, I wanted an open top, I wanted the doors to come off, and I wanted a manual transmission, and you can't do any of that on a 4Runner. Plus, it's a little bit pricey. Now, speaking of powertrains, the Bronco is available in both a 2.3-liter turbocharged engine and a 2.7-liter twin turbocharged engine. And I have to say, after driving the 4-cylinder turbo Bronco, I was amazed by its powertrain. I loved that little 2.3, specifically with the manual. Tons of torque throughout its power band, pretty refined as well. I was really impressed. But once again, when I was looking at which one is going to be more dependable, I don't have a whole ton of experience with the 2.3, especially not in the Bronco. The engine in this Jeep, the 3.6-liter Pentastar V6, is nothing phenomenal. On paper, it's not all that incredible. It's not turbocharged, it's not supercharged, it doesn't even have direct injection. But it's been around since 2012 in the Wrangler, and they use it in pretty much every vehicle in the Stellantis lineup. From Jeep, the Wrangler, the Grand Cherokee, the Ram 1500, the Dodge Charger, the Dodge Challenger, the Chrysler 300, the minivans, they have all used a variation of the 3.6 liter Pentastar V6, and they have probably built millions of these engines over the years. Now, I was talking to some folks. I actually talked to a master tech, and he was saying that the V6, although on paper is nothing special, it'll last a long time. He was doing a rebuild on one, and I said, how long did this one go? And he says, typically they'll go 200 to 250,000 miles before they need major work. And that was something that really made me feel confident in purchasing this particular powertrain. Plus, it's a 6-speed manual transmission. I like the manual in this Jeep. It feels pretty good. Now, once again, not to say that the 2.3 in the Bronco or the 2.7 in the Bronco is going to be unreliable, but I just know I can trust this 3.6 V6 for a long time. Now, one of the big purchasing factors early on, I knew that I wanted a 2-door rather than a 4-door vehicle, partly because I don't have any friends, but really I just like the compact size of the 2-door, and I don't need the practicality in my life of the 4-door rig. And I also wanted a soft top. I love soft top vehicles. I like the versatility of just being able to throw them back. You don't have to deal with panels. You don't have to deal with storing a large rear section of fiberglass, for example. And for some reason, Ford does not let you spec the 2-door Bronco with a soft top from the factory. So you have to get a hard top if you want a 2-door Bronco. Now, of course, the aftermarket will solve this pretty quickly. I am quite sure of it. But then you have to, store the hard top somewhere. I don't have the spot to do that. And I also don't want to have to deal with selling it. I just wanted a 2-door soft top from the factory and be done with it. And I have to say, I do quite like the 2-door soft top Wrangler configuration. This whole portion folds back after undoing 2 latches, and it folds back a considerable distance. The windows come out easily, so does the rear window, and then you have a bikini top in essence, and you can pull the bikini back or fold it back, and you've got a full convertible. It's well designed, well thought out. There's no zippers, pretty easy to use, and it comes from the factory. So another purchasing factor, and granted it's a pretty small one, but it is important to me, the rear seat vents, specifically the air conditioning vents located on the center console in the Jeep Wrangler. Now, behind me is my puppy Blaze. He is a 1-year-old Bernese Mountain Dog, and I love him dearly. He is one of my best friends, and he does not do so well in the heat. I mean, he's basically wearing a giant fur coat 24/7, and when it gets hot, he really struggles. The Jeep Wrangler has these integrated vents in the rear console, and I can point them right at his face when he's sitting down, and he really enjoys the cold air blowing on his nose. The Ford Bronco, for some reason, does not have these vents located up here. Now, from doing some digging, apparently the Bronco has vents underneath the front seats for backseat occupants, but I'm not sure that'll be enough for a little Blazy back there, and I'm going to have to do some more testing when we get the Bronco back to Colorado. But I mean, I think it's a valid concern. It's important not only for rear seat occupants, but specifically for big, fluffy puppies, that they stay cool. I like having those vents in the Wrangler. Another purchasing factor, of course, has to be fuel economy. Now that I've spent most of my life savings on a vehicle, I want to make sure that it's relatively affordable to run. Obviously, no Wrangler is going to be that fuel efficient, but based on my preliminary numbers after the last 150 miles of driving this vehicle, I'm averaging like 19.4, which is really pretty good. And if you look at the EPA, it's supposed to do 20 city, 24 highway, 21 combined, which is not all that far off of the Ford 2.3 EcoBoost numbers of 20 city, 22 highway, 21 combined. But I'm really curious to see what that EcoBoost will do in the real world, because from our experience, you either get Eco or Boost, but it's hard to do both. The 3.6 Pentastar doesn't give you a ton of Eco or a ton of really Boost, let's be honest, but it gives you kind of a nice medium right down the middle. From an on-road driving dynamics standpoint, I think the Bronco is superior to the Wrangler. From my, granted, brief experience driving the Ford, the steering was much more precise, the suspension was much more compliant, especially at speed over expansion joints. Here in Colorado, we've got through the mountains a lot of high-speed twisties, and you hit expansion joints, and the Wrangler can be pretty unsettled. Having said that, though, it's often perceived that the Jeep drives like a cabbage cart. I mean, it's not a wheelbarrow. It drives nicely. It's got good brakes. The power, even in the V6 at 6,000 feet above sea level, is really pretty good. And I have to say, this V6 is kind of a screamer. Probably not as potent as the Bronco, even the small engine, just from seat of the pants experience. We're of course going to have to test them, but plenty of power. 285 horsepower in a short wheelbase Wrangler is enough you'll ever need. The steering, like I said, not as precise, but it turns a vehicle. At the end of the day, it's on mud terrains, right? I'm not expecting it to be a Miata, and brakes are good. Does everything I want it to do. Maybe not quite as good on road as the Bronco though. And then we come to availability. The fact of the matter is, you can go out and buy a Wrangler. You can actually go out and order a Wrangler and receive it in a couple of months. From what I've heard, you can't do the same with the Bronco. There are no Broncos, sitting on dealership lots right now. And even though the vehicle was revealed in the middle of 2020, a year later, it's still a big question mark of when you can actually go out and get one. I know a few people have actually received ones that they've ordered a long while back, but I think if I were to order one at the same time I ordered this Jeep, it probably would have shown up at least in 2022, maybe extending into the 2023 model year. It would have been a super long wait. And then you have to deal with the fact that the Bronco is one of the most highly anticipated vehicles. So when they do finally start showing up in dealers as dealer stock, we're probably going to see some pretty extreme markups. And then I'm willing to bet we're going to see some of those be the more high-end expensive ones, not more of the entry-level ones. So you can go out and buy a Wrangler right now. They're on dealer lots. You can't necessarily say the same for the Ford. So those are some of the big criteria I used to decide on the Wrangler rather than the Bronco. Once again, guys, the Bronco was a phenomenal vehicle and it exceeds the Wrangler in a lot of aspects. Primarily, I think on-road driving experience, seat comfort is a big deal in the Bronco. And if you're into, big screens, that 12-inch screen is pretty phenomenal. The biggest you can get in the Wrangler is an 8.4. But let me tell you about what it was like buying this Wrangler. Now, as I had briefly mentioned, I've actually never myself bought a new vehicle. I've been very fortunate to drive a lot of the company cars because here at TFL we buy them for a period of time to test them and long-term review them, but I've never bought one myself, not a brand new one. So it was a very kind of nerve-wracking but also exciting experience. What I discovered is when I started shopping around for these cars in April, it's hard to find one under 45 grand. Let me explain. Now, on paper, the Wrangler starts at like 28,900 and some change, but you'll never see that one spec'd out on dealer lots. Dealers typically will spec vehicles with 4 doors, not a lot of the 2 doors to begin with, but 4 doors in like the 40, 45, 50, even $55,000 range. And I decided early on I didn't want a massive car payment. I didn't want to go into debt to buy this vehicle. So I was shopping in like the $30,000 range, and even searching nationally, most of them were like in the 35 on the low end up to about $40,000 range, for the entry-level realistic Wrangler you can get. So I decided, well, let me try ordering one. So I went to our dealer, Johnson Auto Plaza in Brighton, Colorado, and I said, hey, I'd like to order a Wrangler. And I placed an order at the end of April for the very base model with air conditioning. So no options except for air conditioning, and the color red. And that one was like super low, $30,000 range. Really excited. But then I was talking to some of the guys over at Jeep, and they said, well, what are you going to use this Jeep for? And I said, well, I want it to be kind of my off-roader, my everyday driver. And they said, well, there's a package for $2,000 called the Willys Sport. And let me show you what that gets you. So the Willys Sport is not your typical Willys. Once again, most Willys are going to be 45, 50K. The Willys Sport is a bare bones, stripped down base model Wrangler with some off-road upgrades. So it's got the Rubicon suspension. It's got this wheel and tire package. This is a mud terrain KM2 tire wrapped in an alloy wheel, so it upgrades from the steel wheels that you typically get on the Sport. It includes the rock rails down here, so you don't have to upgrade the rocker protection, and it also gives you a factory limited slippery differential versus an open diff, and that is all for $2,000. So it's kind of a hell of a deal. But the cool thing is it's still a Sport, and when we go inside, you'll see just how base it is. So I got that. I also wanted a color other than the base color, so I got red. It was like a $245 option. And I got air conditioning, which was $1,300. But that's it. That's all the options. And if you look at the sticker, this is actually a really cool experience. It tells you this vehicle was built especially for your name, Thomas Micah. Isn't that a cool thing? That's kind of a cool thing to have as a memento. But you can see with just a couple of options, the total price was $33,935 with destination. And then I'll tell you how much I paid for it in total. So MSRP $33,900. I did receive a slight discount that brought the total down to $31,807, so about $2,000 off. And then the total with taxes and fees came to $35,162.92, the biggest check I've ever written in my life. That was horrifying. Insurance, I am paying $610.95 every 6 months for my coverage on this Wrangler. Oh, and one more thing. Do you remember that really, really base model I initially ordered with nothing but AC in the color red? Well, it turns out they ended up building that one anyways and shipping it to Johnson Auto Plaza in Brighton. And if you want a really unusual Wrangler, don't get a Rubicon, get that one. That one's super cool. It's bright red. It's basically the same exterior color, same interior color with the steel wheels. It's probably the cheapest one you're gonna find anywhere. 2 doors, manual soft top, the essence of a Wrangler, everything you need, nothing you don't. One other thing too, the dealer experience was amazing, and it's not because we're TFL. I've talked to some other folks who have used them, and everyone I've talked to said they love Johnson Auto Plaza. It's just super no hassle. You go in, they give you a vehicle, you pay for the vehicle, and off you go. All right, the interior on the Willys Sport Trim Wrangler. So the first thing you might notice are the seats. This is a $0 option, a no-cost option to upgrade from black to this tan color called Heritage Tan. Curious to see what you think of it in the comment section below. I personally really don't like black interiors. They just get really hot, and it's just kind of like a sea of black. And I really like the look of this Heritage Tan seating material. I'm curious to see how it will do long term with staying clean. I will say I just put Blaze into the back seat for the first time during this shoot, and look at all the hair. That may have been a mistake, getting the tan with the black dog, but we'll figure out a solution there. But for a driver, I think it's nice. Now, all right, let's talk about the elephant in the room here. It's pretty basic, and when I say pretty basic, I mean like look at the key. This pretty much exemplifies it all. It says Jeep on one side. You flip it over, and there isn't a button to be found. So let me tell you what that means. This vehicle does not actually have keyless entry because it doesn't have power locks. So to get in and out of the vehicle, you have to stick the key into the slot on the door and manually lock and unlock it. Some of you are probably thinking, wow, $33,000 and you don't get power locks. I think that's a pretty valid concern, and granted on the Bronco you do, but I kind of like having the basic no frills option. I mean, it's such a rare thing in 2021 to have roll up windows and no power locks, also no power mirrors. But from an off-road perspective, lighter weight, fewer things to go wrong, fewer things to break. I mean that, lock, unlock, it will always work. There's also, in case you're wondering, no power lock on the trunk. And look at this, because you don't have power windows, you get another cubby. That's kind of cool, isn't it? Anyways, I'm probably going to get some flack for that in the comments below, but I don't mind not having power locks. I do mind the steering wheel a little bit. You get a basic plastic steering wheel. If you're a fan of the channel, you'll know that I'm not a huge fan of plastic steering wheels in general. This one is better than some I felt. I think it's better than the GM plastic steering wheels, but it still would be nice to have a leather wrapped option because you are holding it constantly. Although people tell me it's more durable in the comments, so we'll see how that works. Apart from that though, interior materials really feel quite nice. I think they feel better than the base Bronco, to be totally honest with you. Everything you touch, like the top of the dash, it all feels quite nice. It's nice, soft, padded center console here. The shift boot is this nice stitched leather material. 6-speed manual transmission. It's a zero-cost option on the Wrangler. Any other transmission or engine option you have to pay for, except if you want the 6-speed manual with the Pentastar V6. And then the screen in this vehicle is the base entry-level screen. So it's supposed to be a 5-inch screen. I don't know how they're measuring that, but it doesn't appear to be a 5-inch screen to me, at least seat of the pants. It works really surprisingly well though. It is a touchscreen display. Push in on your presets. It's got Bluetooth audio, so I can stream my music through the little screen. No Apple CarPlay, nothing like that. It's got some other fun stuff like a compass. I don't know, it works. And it's got a volume and a tune knob, which is a really big deal for me. I like having separate knob for that kind of thing. Below that, super simple climate controls. No automatic climate control, no dual zone auto climate. You got a knob here for the fan, one for temperature, and then of course the optional AC, which I think should be standard, but that's how they do it. No heated seats, no heated steering wheel, no hill descent control, nothing like that. Still have a 4-wheel drive though, 2 high, 4 high, neutral, 4 low. No locking differentials or sway bar disconnect, although it does have brake lock differential, and it does have a limited slip rear differential as well. And then of course we come to safety. It's got 4 airbags. I wish they would up that a little bit, but it does have driver and passenger and then side impact as well. But other than that, smaller screen than I've seen on the other Wranglers, the nicer Wranglers here in the center console. So there you can see it in the middle. It does have actual physical heat or temperature and fuel gauges, which is a little bit unusual. But look at that, there's your vehicle info. It tells you everything you need to know in regards to oil pressure, temperature, coolant temp, tires, that kind of thing. There's the fuel economy, 19.2, trip computers, and all that is in there. It also tells you your audio settings. But overall, I think the interior is going to work just fine. Feels pretty durable. I wish you could get an option for a vinyl floor. I still have carpets, but the Willys did come with the rubber floor mats, which is all good. So there you have it, the reasons I bought the 2021 Wrangler over the 2021 Bronco. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. We talked about the major purchasing factors, talked about which one I bought. I went full transparent about the price that I paid and the insurance, and I hope this was helpful for some of you out there. And we'll see you in the next one. Got to get this thing dirty. I think that'll be next. Well, Blaze already got the back seat dirty, but we got to get the rest of it dirty. Blaze, you did a good job. Good job starting us off there. See you next time.